Hello, this is Mike, and I'm going to be presenting on my classroom environment plan. So first, I wanted to start off by showing my physical environment. So this is a quick little sketch that I made for my classroom. In the front here, I included an interactive screen where students will be able to watch documentaries, videos, presentation slides, but at the same time, they can come up and write on the screen for group assignments and projects and things like that. Over here on the left, I included a little table where students will have access to materials. Oftentimes students will misplace or forget certain essential materials like handouts or um, colored pencils, things like that. So here they could just quickly come and grab whatever they need. On the right hand side of that, they can submit late work. So students will know, because I'll tell them this is where you submit your late work. Anything that needs grading, just put it on this little tray here. And finally, over here on the very right is their homework tray. So whatever assignments are due, they can come right up or just pass them up forward and place them right over here for me to grade. All around the walls here, I want to have historical posters, inspirational materials along the walls. So famous sayings, key figures. This is really going to help students sort of see themselves in my classroom. I was thinking of having things like contemporary movements such as the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that, so it can really make history movements relatable. And a lot of the times when students see black and white images, they don't really see that connection, but when we connect it to current themes, I feel like it makes history relevant to them. Over here on the very right hand side of the wall, I wanted to have a wall dedicated for student work. So good materials, quality work, projects, things that students are going to be able to look at and feel proud of. And just as a way of saying, hey, I really appreciate what my students do, and here's a display of what they are able to accomplish. The way I have my seating set up is usually we're going to have a lot of collaborative work. So they're going to be in fours, but they can also separate these into just rows. And I like open spaces so I can be able to walk through all the way to the back and in between rows to sort of monitor, assist students, anyone who needs extra help, and just keep an eye on everyone. I don't want to have any of my students feel secluded or that there's no attention being paid to them, which is exactly why I have my teacher desk all the way in the back here. And that serves a purpose because I want to meet and greet all of my students at the front door, shaking hands, maybe not so much right now with this pandemic going on, but just asking about their day, issues that are important to them, and so forth. Here, I have a little desk for independent work. If students maybe forget their tablets, they can access a computer here, or if they just need time to be away. Sometimes students don't want to work in groups, they can sit here. And then finally on this wall right here, I want to have a college wall. So students can see lots of different posters and flags from different colleges around California and different parts of the country, but also provide them with material like information such as financial aid, just really re-emphasizing that college is a realistic goal no matter what your zip code is, where you come from, your income background. Just having information and powerful knowledge that they can actually use and implement towards their future. Moving on, opening and closing routines. So bookending, like I said, I want to greet my students at the door, shaking their hands, using their names, building rapport. Opening, the way I want to open my class would be by discussing current events. So particularly, I can have a news article, a video, and just talk about it with my classroom, present it to them, and somehow, some way, I want to tie it back to the lesson that we're going to be discussing. So that's a way of making history relevant and fun and interactive with my class, or maybe just a historical quote. Have them think about a certain quote that one of the key figures that we're going to be learning about said, as a way to really get the juices flowing and have them with that mindset of learning about the day's lesson. Also, routines are important, especially right now. A lot of us are feeling a little bit unmotivated. So I feel that having a routine that students will be able to master is key to having them feel motivated. So on the board, I want to have a do now and do later. Uh, so emphasizing do now, like turn in your homework or take out your notebook so we can answer these questions or write about the article that I'm presenting and so on. It really gets them started and it sets expectations for them. Closing, I wanted to tie each lesson, like I said, to the current events or the historical quote, and it just really is a good way to keep them informed and engaged. The rules and behaviors. So I feel like a good way to set expectations would be to create a classroom constitution with the students. So together, students are going to be creating rules to abide by and also creating rules for me. So what do they expect their teacher to do? How do they want to be treated? And we're going to discuss these rules, we're going to debate them, we're going to vote on them. So it really gives them a sense of agency and control within my classroom, which I feel is very important because we all have a voice, we all have input, and I want to have my classroom be very open, very inclusive, and very student-oriented. Some of the amendments, however, that are non-negotiable are going to be zero tolerance on bullying, on hate, intolerance, and then some class or school policies that normally are emphasized would be no cell phones, no hoodies, and things like that. So there's no wiggle room there. These are just rules that they're going to have to follow. And once the Constitution has been ratified, the parents will get a copy, which they will sign along with their students or their sons and daughters. And then classroom community. So building community is good. One way I'm going to do this would be to have them create name tags. So they're going to be able to draw 4 things that represent them in their or represents their interests and tells us a little bit about who they are and why they're here. Well, obviously because they're forced to. But yeah, this is a good way to for us to get to know each other. I'll be able to get to know their names because they'll have their name tags in front of them. And I'll ask everyone to stand up and to just share out what they drew and why it's important to them. And setting ground rules. So what this is going to sound like specifically would be just me making a formal announcement saying something like, in my classroom, we will address each other with respect, we will support each other, and we will treat each other with kindness. I will not tolerate any bullying. All ideas are valid, all cultures, religions, and identities are respected inside this room. So students are going to have roles to play here too. They're going to have a lot of group work. They're going to have citizenship grades, and I'm going to try to implement restorative practices. And a good way to reinforce this would be obviously by modeling ideal behavior, because I'm there as the adult and I'm the one that's representing what the expectations are for my classroom. So if I do hear students slip up or say something that was offensive, I would address it immediately and say, please don't use that language. You know, it's offensive. That's not the type of thing that's going to be tolerated in my classroom. All right, moving forward to consequences. So I broke it down into a couple of easy steps. So proximity would be the first means of engagement. So if I notice that there's a lot of chatting in one particular side of the room, just getting closer usually diffuses the situation because they're like, oh, I got the teacher's attention, which I didn't really want. Um, Second would be a warning. That could be a glance or a glare. Uh, and then another warning would be verbal, just telling them, hey, like, we need to focus here. Or if they have, sometimes I like to make an agreement with my students. So if they need some time to walk away and get some water just to relax and come back calm, then I just say, hey, do you want to go get some water? Just a little subtle, not put them in the spot. If the problem continues, though, that's when I'm going to move them to the independent workspace just to sort of diffuse the situation quickly. Um, Fourth, if they continue, then I will write their name on the board for a lunch detention, and this is the perfect time for us to have a one-on-one discussion where I will implement restorative practices, just kind of get them to talk about why this is happening and how we can fix this issue. Really not trying to be so punitive, but rather just bridge this understanding between teacher and students. Finally, there's going to be a parent call or email, so we can set up a conference. When you show students that there are consequences to their actions, then most likely they're just going to want to cut it out. And finally, referrals. As many teachers have mentioned, this is like a last resort, so that's why I put it as number 6. But each day should be treated as a start over period for my students. So, you know, just tabula rasa, blank slate, we can just start over the next day. If they behave, I'm not going to hold a grudge. They shouldn't hold grudges with me either, because like I said, I want to emphasize respect to all of my students. And yeah, having structure is important, and expecting my students to respect me and my classroom and each other is just as important. So it's never a bad thing to be firm but fair. And that is my classroom environment.